And you're live, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to this Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting on Thursday, 15th of April 2021. My name is Councillor Vanessa Bell and I'm the Chairman of this committee. Before we commence the business of the meeting, can I ask all in attendance to observe a minute's silence to mark the passing of the Duke of Edinburgh. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So, members, this meeting is held under new regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April 2020, not that new anymore, in response to the COVID-19 situation. Please could I ask everyone present in this meeting to ensure your camera remains on where broadband permits. I know members are having some issues tonight. And your microphone remains muted when not addressing the committee. This will reduce background noises and avoid any unintentional disturbances. We're streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. Members and officers, during each item, please use the hands up function of the meeting to indicate if you wish to speak. You are reminded that apart from indicating points of order or that you have to leave the meeting, the chat function should not be used for questions or any other purpose. When speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please ensure you reference a page or paragraph number and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. When invited to speak, please ensure you turn on your microphone. Now, if I may ask officers taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves, starting with Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Hughes.
Good evening, members. Cheryl Hughes, Programmes Performance and Governance Manager.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughes. Tara?
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. Tara Bird, Committee Services Officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Are there any other officers present, please? If so, identify yourselves now. No? Before I call on the clerk to take the roll call of committee members, can I ask those councillors in attendance to introduce themselves, please?
Hi, Nick Skeens in attendance.
Thank you, Councillor Skeens. Tara, please can you carry out a roll of committee members to confirm who is in attendance? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, if you could just indicate if you're here when I call your name, please. Starting with Councillor Bassinger, please.
Yeah, good evening, I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Miss Beale.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Beale. Councillor Bell, you're here. Councillor Boyce. He's not on the call. Councillor Mrs. Fleming.
Present, Tara. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Mays.
Present, Tara. Thank you.
Councillor Morley.
Present, Tara.
Thank you. And Councillor Morris.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tara. Good evening, everyone. May I have the apologies for absence, please, Tara?
Yes, Chairman. Apologies been received from Councillor Dewick. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tara. On to item 3, the minutes of the 21st of January 2021 meeting. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on 21st of January 2021, found on pages 3 to 6, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. If you wish to second that motion, please unmute your microphone and state your name now.
I'll second that, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. So if any member wishes to raise any matter of accuracy, please use the hands up function to indicate, and I will invite you to speak. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. This was actually a hands up for the previous item. I was just wondering, could the clerk confirm whether or not we have anyone from the Democratic Alliance group with us tonight, please?
Yes, Chairman, the member for the Democratic Alliance on the committee is Councillor Jurek and Councillor Boyce, and neither are present, I can confirm. Thank you.
So neither representative from the Democratic Alliance is present.
That's right, yes, that's right, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for raising that, Councillor Morris. Apologies that I didn't see your hand at the appropriate time.
That's
So,
all right, everyone.
Thank you. So any other members wishing to speak on accuracy? I don't think so. So members, can we agree these by assent, or do we need to vote?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Excellent. So that brings us on to agenda item number 4, public participation, and I can advise that we've not received any submissions from members of the public today. Item 5, disclosure of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraphs 6 to 8 inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Do I have any declarations, members? No? Okay, lovely, thank you. So, item 6. We move to agenda item 6, update on agreed scrutiny items found on pages 7 to 24. In a moment, I will call on the officer to present this item. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the hands up function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. So, Mrs. Hughes, can I pass over to you, please, to present the report?
Yep, no problem. Good evening, members. The headline report provides an update for the work plan items with emerging information provided as appendices. So I'm going to specifically give an update as lead officer for transformation first. On the 21st of January, the committee agreed to initialise the work plan item for transformation. This was defined as a review to which the original objectives were achieved, as well as identifying any wider impacts. The transformation programme was signed off in August 2018, and in the blueprint document agreed by Council, there were 7 work streams set out that had outcomes identified. The report has been put together by conducting interviews and gathering evidence from relevant officers to determine to what extent the identified outcomes have been achieved. The information is set out in Appendix 1, which is found on page 11 of your pack. Any areas where there were issues with delivery, specifications or timescales have been highlighted in the learning points section at the start of the appendices. There is also a specific column for customer and cost implications, and we have used feedback from our residents and staff, as well as the wider information, to populate this column. At the time of putting the report together, the finance team, who've been busy with the medium-term financial strategy and financial year end, are additionally working on wider reconciliation exercise for transformation around the budgets and anticipated savings to feed into wider reporting. Within the draft report, you will see yellow highlighting, which denotes where further information is still expected to come forwards. Members are invited to review the information set out so far, comment on areas where they feel information is lacking but within the brief of the item. And they are also requested that for the transformation item specifically, we move the final report date to the 31st of May to allow for finance to finish their work and for that to be included in the final conclusions. Thank you.
You're on mute.
No.
I'm so sorry, I was having teeth trouble and I muted myself while I sorted that out. I do apologise, everybody. So back on track. Recommendations set out in the report are as follows. Little 1, that the committee reviews the initial update on the transformation learning item at Appendix 1 and considers the date delay for final report set out at paragraph 3.3.3 of the report. And little 2, that the committee notes the initial response and information provided on the debt recovery process and considers a deferment of the review for 6 months and whether it wishes to define the scrutiny item. Sorry, I'm on little 2. Oh, I do apologise, members. We did have a discussion earlier where we agreed to split these, I believe, Mrs. Hughes. So we're just doing little 1 at the moment. Apologies. Moving on. So that's just little 1, that the committee reviews the initial update on the transformation learning item at Appendix 1 and considers the date delay for final report set out at paragraph 3.3.3 of the report. So if any member wishes to second that motion, please, Councillor Morris, to you, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, if we completely skip some of the agenda, because I believe on page 8, 3.4, I did have a few things to say about that.
I think what's happening, Councillor Morris, is we do the motion and then we have the debate. So we do the motion first and then we do the recommendation, then we do the debate. Am I right, Mrs. Hughes? Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, sorry, I've just presented the first report on transformation set out in Appendix 1 of this particular report at the moment.
So then we're moving on. We're not at debt recovery yet, Councillor Morris. That's coming up in a bit.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm sorry, I've got not just my teeth in a twist tonight, members. I seem to be a bit all over the place, so I do apologise. So did we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Fleming?
Councillor Fleming, I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, is that a legacy hand or is that for the debate to come?
Legacy and the debate to come.
Okay, thank you. So I will now invite members to make any comments on the report, please. So have any members, Councillor Fleming?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask Cheryl a question. Cheryl, would it be possible for the papers from that August 2018 full council meeting, when the transformation was agreed, are they accessible on the system?
They were private and confidential documents at the time, which is why I haven't circulated them as part of the pack. But we can work out a way to maybe extract the initial information. I have been assured by Tara that they should be accessible by the iDrive, but obviously we couldn't make them part of the public pack because they were private and confidential documents.
Yes, Tara's just confirmed that they are accessible on the iDrive. So
They are.
Yeah.
And then Cheryl, when you were compiling your report, or when you do, will you sort of refer back to, I know at the end of every full council or strategy and resources, you have a section on implications and you outline impact on customers, equality, risk, resources, financial, all the rest of it. Have you are you referring back to those? So those implications that you originally identified, are you using that as the sort of point that you go back to?
Not specifically from committee reports. The reason that customer and cost was identified was that when we agreed the item in January, that was something that came out of the committee that that the committee felt that we should be looking at. But I could, as part of the further work that I do, I could also include those other criteria.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just come back? Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cheryl, because you know, we have all of these committees and we see these laid out at the end of every report, and I'm just interested to know how often we do actually refer back to them and say, you know, you identify those risks, and it would be quite useful, I think, for this committee to actually go and look at those and say, okay, we identified them, these impacts, possible impacts, and, you know, did they come about? Or
Yes, good suggestion, Councillor Fleming. Can that be included, Cheryl, please?
Yep, I'll do some work on that.
thank you.
Excellent,
Thank you.
excellent. Thank you. I mean, I have to say, and I want to thank you very much for the work you've done so far on the report. I have to say, I am alarmed by some of it. I'm particularly alarmed by the satisfaction survey results. And I've looked at some other local authorities, and I know that they are sort of vaguely comparable to many. What's even more alarming is the satisfaction rates before the before figures, which were just woeful, to be quite honest. So although it's excellent to see that there has been some improvement and we are going in the right direction, I'm still concerned at staff and customer satisfaction levels. So I'm hoping that that's, you know, something we can look at as a result of this scrutiny item. Councillor Morley, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Vanessa. I was just actually looking at that as well. That was funny enough, as great minds think alike. That's just what I was reading, and wondered how things were moving forward, or if they're not, or how's that going really with satisfaction and turnover of staff. Cheryl, thank you.
So we've recently published the staff survey results, and it's gone to Performance Governance and Audit Committee. And the good news is that between 2019 and 2020, there's been a good increase in staff satisfaction and a decrease in staff turnover as well. So I can share with the committee the report that recently went to Performance Governance and Audit, because that might help to give a bit of assurance.
Yeah.
That would be
I know what
right.
it's like. Employing people myself, I know what it's like. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. So do any other members wish to speak on the report? I am sorry, or can we vote? Can we go to the vote now? And can we do that by assent, members, or do we want to vote on it?
That's fine.
Agree that by assent?
Agree.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
I will not be agreeing. Sorry, guys.
Sorry,
abstaining.
Councillor. If you're
You might need
abstaining,
to have a vote.
we'll have to go for a vote, Councillor Morris. Okay. I think we've got a bit of a delay on you, Councillor Morris. So apologies. I didn't get that until after we'd said assent. So bear with us. If you're trying to talk, wave at me and I'll hopefully hang on. So
That's the quickest way I've ever been told that I'm slow. Thank you.
far be that from the case, Councillor Morris. So Tara, if we could go to the vote, please.
Yes, Chairman, of course. Members, this is voting for recommendation 1, which is that the committee reviews the initial update on the transformation learning item at Appendix 1 to the report and considers the date delay for the final report as set out in paragraph 3.3.3 of the report. If you could just indicate for, against or abstain when I call your name, please, starting with Councillor Bassinger. Thank you.
For, please, Tara.
Thank you. Councillor Miss Beale.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Mrs Fleming.
For.
Councillor Mays.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Morris.
Abstain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The results of that are 6 in favour, nobody against and 1 abstention. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Tara. So that brings us on to the debt recovery process. So Cheryl, do I read out the little two now, or do we have a presentation about it?
Yeah, I can give a bit of an intro.
If you wouldn't
helpful.
mind, that'd be helpful, I think. Thank you.
Okay, so members, the covering report here outlines that this is an initial feedback and response to the brief given by the committee on the matter of debt recovery process. In the document, Appendix 2, found on page 19 of your pack, the officer has attempted to address the key outcomes and bring back an interim response. The response seeks to further provide background information and to reassure members that there is an adopted corporate strategy for debt recovery, including supporting the vulnerable. There are internal work processes in place that reflect that strategy. There isn't a hard and fast process that is followed, and we adapt to individual needs. And different groups of staff deal with different stages of the debt recovery process, with more experienced staff involved as more formal stages are reached. It is clear that issues around vulnerability are difficult to assess if people do not properly engage with the council and provide the information that is sought from them. Staff do work closely with partner agencies and help to support customers that are in difficulty. In May, a new government statutory initiative will allow customers additional time to support them with debt management, but this very much mirrors what we are already doing. Possible options for the committee on review and consideration of this report are, firstly, if the interim report provides the committee with sufficient level of assurance, they could close the review. If not, the committee need to be specific in terms of what further information or detail is required, or perhaps redefine the review. And the committee are also asked to note that the covering report says that if further information is required, including, for example, data around individual cases, this will at present put an unreasonable demand on a team that are already working under a lot of extreme pressure, and therefore that further work should be deferred for 6 months. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you very much, Cheryl. So, excuse me. So what I will do now, I'll read out little two and ask for a seconder, and then we will move on to debate on little two before we vote. But I would like to thank the officers involved in producing the information so far, and I would really like to acknowledge the hard work and the pressure that Revs and Ben's staff are under at the moment, supporting the vulnerable in our community in these difficult times. So, little two, that the committee notes the initial response and information provided on the debt recovery process and considers a deferment of the review for 6 months, and whether it wishes to redefine the scrutiny item in light of the interim report at Appendix 2. So do I have a seconder for that? If so, please speak now.
Yeah,
Councillor Mays.
Oh, Councillor Mays, thank you. Thank
Sorry.
you very much. Oh, so I would like to, and Councillor Morley, thank you too. So I would like to open up the floor, the virtual floor, for debate now, please, members. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I'd just like to point out at the very last sentence reads, confined to debts occurring in relation to council tax and business rates. I would like to point out that as this was my item, the whole idea of bringing this to overview and scrutiny was to make sure that vulnerable debtors are adequately protected. A vulnerable debtor could have a parking ticket, for instance. It should not be about what the debt is. It is all about and solely about who the debtor is. The vulnerable people need protection and are afforded that protection in law by way of the Taking Control of Goods Act, Taking Control of Goods Regulations, which is in the Courts Tribunal and Enforcement Act. Sorry, getting my acts and regulations wrong. It seems that there is almost a willful need
Sorry, we've lost you, Councillor Morris.
This.
Sorry,
Hang
Councillor
on,
Morris.
I'll do the camera off.
Okay.
Is that better, guys? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, if you could just repeat the last thing you said, please.
It seems that there is almost willful committance to want to misunderstand this item, and I'm very unhappy that as lead councillor, and perhaps one of the officers can help me with it. As I understand it, the officer that was dealing with this, Stuart Jennings, is no longer with Malden District Council. Is that correct?
No, Councillor Morris, it most certainly isn't. And I've just been informed that the corporate debt recovery strategy does cover all debts, not just council tax and business rates. So the actual recovery strategy that we've been presented with does cover all debts.
Right. So why did it say at 3.4.1, last sentence, confined to debts occurring in relation to
was that what was agreed?
Business rates?
Was that what was agreed previously, Cheryl? Could you help us out there?
0.1.
Sorry, just where there was a breakup. Sorry, which point?
Sorry, did we agree to limit this to council tax and business rates at a previous meeting?
No, we didn't.
Not the recovery process, but when we defined the request for data, it was based on.
Okay, that's helpful, and I will kind of come back, Councillor Morris. I think that we might be helped out on that by something that I'd like to propose shortly. So if I can do that after I've heard from Councillor Morley, and then you come back after that, is that okay, Councillor Morris?
Well, can I just finish, please, Councillor Bell?
Yes, go ahead.
Yep. So we're not sure where. I mean, the report's got holes all over the place. I mean, 3.4.1 does say relation to council tax and business rates quite clearly. I'm actually looking at it right now, and now I'm told that that's different. I'd like to know why, as lead councillor, I've not had any of my emails responded to by pretty much anyone surrounding this whole item, and why we are dragging our feet so badly on it. I've not spoken to Stuart Jennings once, and apparently he is the lead officer on it. I think he was given 12 weeks to do it. I'd like to know exactly how far anyone's got, because I don't think anyone's done anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Morley, can I come to you, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just saying, reading through that, and then when it got to the point where different people are assessed, different people are looking after different needs, I think that's a really positive way forward, because people do have different needs. And I just really wanted to know, Cheryl, I think I asked before, roughly how many or what's the percentage of taxpayers or are in arrears or are struggling? Is there a latest figure on that? Thank you.
Can I interject there? Sorry, Councillor Morley and Cheryl, just because I think if I can just come in, what we have here is we have a quite thorough list of outputs. What we don't have is any outcomes. We have what the council is doing about it all, but we don't have the figures on who needs us to do these things. So okay. I think what we need to know, as Councillor Morley has said, is we actually need some figures. We need some numbers on how many people are experiencing this process. My understanding was this was the information we wanted, was how many people are experiencing these issues. And what we've got is what the council's policy is. So my suggestion for moving forward with this and focus is that we actually need those stats. And I'll come to you again now, Councillor Morris.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Far too much time is being taken over the eccentricities involved in this item of scrutiny. It's quite simple. I mean, if you look at government information, I believe that around one in three children in the Malden district are below the poverty line. So we've got a lot of poor people, and we only need to use national figures to know that that's too many people that could be targeted by unreasonable pressure placed on them by the authority, our local authority, that are supposed to be taking care of them. This is quite simple. It's being made very, very complicated. And as I said earlier, it seems that there are people here that are committed to misunderstanding it and muddying the waters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. I mean, again, I do want to kind of, I think it's important that we do acknowledge the pressure that the staff are under with the current work that they have to do. And I think under the circumstances, it is reasonable to request an extension. But I think we haven't been clear about the information. Well, have we been clear? I thought we were clear that we wanted out numbers, because we can't. Councillor Morris, I want a breakdown. I don't want an overall figure. I want a breakdown so that I can know what the problems are and specific areas. Not an overall number isn't.
I'd like engagement from the officers with me. I would like all those things.
Councillor Morris,
any will from this council to take this forward. I'm just seeing lip service paid to it.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Councillor Morris. The process is very clear, and Mr. Jennings, Stuart Jennings is the lead officer. All correspondence and communication goes through him. That is the process. That is the process, and it has to be followed. And if you feel that Mr. Jennings isn't responding, then I will have that conversation as chair with him. But we have to follow the process, frustrating though it is.
I'll put it to everyone. I'll put it to everyone. Don't worry about that. I'll put it to everyone. At the end of the day, they haven't even got the actual grasp of what we're trying to do correct. It is not about the debt. It is about the person who is getting the unreasonable and unlawful action taken against them by this council. I am here to hopefully stop vulnerable people being put under undue pressure that they are entitled to be protected from by law. I've done the backwards and forwards through this for quite some considerable time. I'm here to give my input as the lead councillor, and I don't seem to be getting anywhere with it. And that seems to be a wanton lack of commitment to actually exploring this part of the scrutiny item.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Your response is taken on board. Thank you. Councillor Mays, I think we have then Councillor Ms Beale and then Councillor Fleming, I think. So Councillor Mays, to you first.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I do ask the question, why hasn't there been any response to Councillor Morris's emails, telephone calls or whatever? That is concerning as a councillor. And also, I thought we were very clear about we needed some basic baseline data. And well, I can't find any baseline data here on which to hang all this meat. There's no substance to it. I don't know whether we're talking about 3 people, 300 people, 3,000 people, and what types of debts we are looking at, and what we should be doing about it going forward. This is it's good as far as it goes, but it's not far enough, and it doesn't give us any of the information that I am absolutely confident that we asked for in the first place. Thank you.
I thought so. I'm going to Councillor Beale next, then Councillor Fleming, then Councillor Morris. Councillor Beale, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I must admit I actually agree with Chrissy Morris. The officer response is not always very good at all, and I do share his frustration with that. In the conversations we've had up to now, it would appear to me that how can we make a decision if we haven't got the information we asked for? So I wasn't sure whether you were proposing that the item was deferred until we have all the relevant information, and then we can make an informed decision.
That is what is being proposed, Councillor Beale. So if I can go to Councillor Fleming and then back to Councillor Morris. Councillor Fleming.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to make a suggestion that perhaps we could put a review onto the agenda for each meeting that we have going forward, just so that we could be sure that we're on track. So I think as chair, you can do that. You can add that as an agenda item that you want it reviewed. And then also, I just wanted to say about Councillor Morris mentioned parking fines. I think the collecting authority for parking fines is Chelmsford, I think.
I think you're right, it is, yeah. It is, it's Chelmsford. So thank you for that. So, yeah, I think we're all, Councillor Beale, is that a legacy hand?
Yes, sorry, I'll wake up now.
I think, so I've got Councillor Morris and then Councillor Bassinger. So Councillor Morris, if you could come back.
Councillor Bell, just so yourself and Councillor Fleming know that even though it is the Essex Parking Partnership, the fundamental starting point for the issue of the ticket from Malden District Council staff, and they pass that over. So even though there is a break in the link as it was by going over to the Essex Parking Partnership, we are still initiating the ticket. So I believe that we have a duty of care to ensure that any person that is issued with a ticket should be scrutinised for vulnerability. I'd also just like to bring up that on page, sorry, I'm just getting to it, on page 21, and this is going slightly off piste, but seeing as it's here, I'll bring it up. The liability order. The liability orders are given to the magistrates court on bulk, thousands at a time, and are simply put in front of a magistrate to sign one of them. I will find the section of law, but a magistrate should be looking at every single case on its own merits and not simply being dumped with thousands of liability orders just on the say-so of a financial officer that pays to go to the court and then dishes out the liability orders. The liability orders should be subject to scrutiny as well. That is also an illegal act that councils use to actually ensure that they can get what is seen to be an authority to send goons around. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morris. I'm going to go to Councillor Bassinger now and then to Cheryl, who will come back on some of the points. So, Councillor Bassinger, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to ask the question, exactly how are we defining the vulnerable and the vulnerability? I mean, is that from people that have actually come through the council system and made contact, or are we sort of looking at some sort of national figures? I mean, how do we know what we're talking about here?
And therein lies the problem, and I think Councillor Morris is probably best placed to actually help out with. Oh, Councillor Mays, you have your hand up. Councillor Mays.
Yeah, I think Councillor Morris was probably spotted the same. It is actually in part of the index, because I actually was concerned about that element. So on page 21, it does list vulnerability, or it lists some vulnerabilities, and certainly having been involved with vulnerable people for the last few weeks, as has Councillor Morris and other members, there are many that go beyond this, and who is determining it? We haven't even taken a definition from the NHS or one of the other bodies that looks at vulnerable people, social services, etc. And I am concerned that has possibly been overlooked. But even so, we need to know where the definitions are coming from to ensure they are the right ones, that somebody, and that can be subjective. So immediately, if you had a bad day, nobody's vulnerable. If you have a good day, everybody's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that also concerns me with a system.
I come back. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, are we quantifying vulnerability by financial vulnerability or mental vulnerability or poverty?
Exactly.
I'm going to bring in Councillor Morris. Sorry, I wasn't quite sure if you'd frozen, or if you had your hand up in real life there, Councillor Morris. So over to you on this. I think you're probably best placed. You're frozen though.
No, can't see you. Turn your camera off.
I think we're going to have to go camera off. Councillor Morris, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? You
Go
got
for
me
it.
now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah.
No, there is no legal definition of vulnerable, and that is to the nasty people's hands, because they don't have to follow any of these rules. Now, the simple fact of the matter is, from dealing with vulnerable people for decades and from dealing with bailiffs for decades, the bailiffs only get paid if they get a result. So it doesn't suit their purpose to find someone vulnerable. It also doesn't suit the council's purpose to find someone vulnerable, because once you have identified someone as vulnerable, you have to leave them alone a little bit. Otherwise, they could, you know, ultimately commit suicide or something else like that. But that leaves you with the problem. The bailiff with the problem, the council with the problem that they don't. Personally, I would much rather have someone lose a little bit of money than have someone lose their life, which is, you know, has happened on a few cases that I have dealt with. People do commit suicide over debt worries, and they do. It massively impacts people's lives having large goons turn up that tell you that they will kick your door down, even though they probably can't, that tell you that you might, we probably won't, when they tell you that, for instance, your children will be taken away from you because you have a civil debt that you are unable to pay. Now, we cannot leave the decision on vulnerability to anyone that has a pecuniary interest, a financial interest in it. So, for instance, the officers won't be able to decide, the councillors won't be able to decide, the bailiffs definitely cannot decide, because ultimately they get paid by results. So we need to take that away, and I would say that the safest way to do that would probably be to leave the decision of vulnerability with medical people, because those medical people haven't got invested in getting the money. They probably have more of an interest in the person rather than the debt that they are trying to collect. All this, I'm just gagging to tell Stuart Jennings or anyone else that would want to listen to it.
Thank you,
because
Councillor.
as I keep saying, we're dragging our heels on it. We can't have vulnerable interest in that. Thank you.
Thank you, and apologies, you were coming in and out there. I know Councillor Morley had his hand up, but that's gone down again. Councillor Bassinger.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just to come back, I mean, we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place as far as I see it, because, you know, we all want to protect the vulnerable, most certainly. But, you know, we have to accept that there are people that are here just to bulk the system. So in a way, you know, the only sort of way we have of testing this, as far as I can see, I mean, clearly, you know, no one wants to say that anyone is out there to buck the system, but there are, is to use really the sort of the council's criterion. That's all we have. Otherwise, I don't know how we can decide who is vulnerable and who isn't.
Well, I think, and I'm going to disagree with Councillor Morris, because I don't think we should leave it up to the NHS, because there are a lot of vulnerabilities that have nothing to do with medical conditions. So as a social worker, I can assure you of that. So I think we need to look at something. I think we actually do need to look at, as a council, drawing on the knowledge of our partner agencies and the experts, and coming up with our own definition and getting that approved by the people that know. I think that would be a much better way forward. Councillor Morris. You've frozen, Councillor Morris.
Thank you. Oh, is that better, guys? Can you hear me?
Just
Can you hear
about.
me?
We can now, but you're still very in and out.
I'll try and make it quick. Councillor Bassinger has a very good point, and luckily I've already thought of that, and I've dealt with quite a few cases of people that are robust enough for bailiffs and that do try and pull the vulnerability card. Now, if you want to look further back into this, and this was my original suggestion, we need to make better use of an attachment of earnings order. The attachment of earnings order can be put on vulnerable people, which would not prevent our revenue stream from being collected, and is a lot easier way to approach all debts. I'm not saying let the vulnerable people off. I'm not saying let anyone off that claims to be vulnerable, because I know there's going to be people on a swindle. What I'm trying to say is we should move away from goons turning up on vulnerable people's doors, and we should replace that with the attachment of earnings, which is a relatively painless, smaller amount that goes out on a regular basis and that can be used to recoup the debt. I'm not asking for the debts to be wrote off. I'm asking for a different way of that to happen. An attachment of earnings order would be a much smarter way to approach vulnerable debtors, and that is what I'm asking for.
And I think you're pushing at an open door, Councillor Morris. I think we all agreed at previous meeting that that is what we want to aim for. That is what we want to look at. But I'm just not clear why we haven't got the figures and the stats yet, so that we can evidence that. Because yes, Councillor Morris, you're right. We're 6 months, however long down the line, and we haven't got the information we need to actually do the bit of work that we need. So
I did ask from Councillor Bell, and the other thing is, I mean, a year ago when I first floated this idea, I was told, I mean, I'm a councillor here. They told me that I had to put a freedom of information request in. I'm a councillor, and they asked me for a freedom of information. I've got to put a freedom FOI in for my own council to try and get something done which will improve the lives of our
you've gone again.
Residents, improve the profile of the...
You've gone again, Councillor.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing I'm going.
No, I mean, I'm aware other people need to speak, but I'm also aware that some time ago I did say, Cheryl, I'd allow you to come back on some of those points. So if I could do that now and then go to Councillors Bassinger and Mays again, please. Cheryl.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of reflect that, and it is highlighted in the header report that, you know, this isn't the full report, this is an interim, and we acknowledge that it doesn't have the detail. And the detail that you're talking about, the reason that we haven't been able to access that is due to service pressures in the Revs and Bens team that would need to pull it out, and it's not just the time that it would take them to extract the data and give the data, but it's the context setting as well, because some debts might have you know, spanned different years in terms of their recovery, so enforcement might, you know, go between different years, and there are some long-standing cases, and they'd need to give that context and information and sort of drill down into the data to explain it. One thing I can say, obviously knowing the balanced scorecard exceptions that are reported to the Performance Governance and Audit Committee, is that overall our council tax collection is down, and that we have obviously reported that in the medium-term financial strategy and you know, the budget setting for the next year. So obviously, you know, debts are up slightly on where they would be on that basis. And also just the detail that you've talked about in terms of, you know, how many people are in arrears, what debts, just to note that I've been noting down that, and obviously that can be fed back, but the report does request a 6-month extension on this, on the basis that the team that we would be asking all of that information from would obviously be the team that would need to do that context setting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. That's very helpful. I'll come to Councillors Bassinger and Mays in a second, but I mean, I think our hands are tied because we're here, but I think we need to. I think where I want to go is we obviously need this information. So we have to give staff another 6 months, and we have to note that, note Councillor Morris. I can see Councillor Morris shaking his head. Sorry, that information hasn't been provided as requested. But I'll come to Councillor Bassinger, and then Councillor Mayes, and then Councillor Morris again.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing really to add. I'd just like to say that I fully support Councillor Morris.
Did you just assume?
Sorry. Sorry, I don't. Go ahead, Councillor Bassinger. I'm not quite sure what went on there.
I'd just like to say I do support Councillor Morris in this. I think that the idea of us using bailiffs these days is very draconian and archaic, and I think his system seems far more likely to actually to give us some results. I think the idea of bailiffs, and having dealt with bailiffs, there's nothing more distressing, and should somebody be vulnerable, to actually have these people turn up at your doorstep at your home is a mugging, it's rape, and I find it really distressing. But having said all those things, we do need the information, most certainly. We can't just do a knee-jerk reaction here. And I feel sorry for Councillor Morris, because I know he wants to do something right now, as we all do. But that's not how it will possibly work. We have to let them provide the information and then take it forward. So I'm hoping Councillor Morris won't go and will stay here, because it's a good thing you're doing, and I think everybody pretty much supports what you're doing.
We do. I can see heads nodding, for every single head nodding here. Councillor Mayes, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I think I absolutely support this. We don't have the information. That is frustrating for us. That is very frustrating. I think 6 months is somewhat of a long lead in for that information. And maybe we should actually be pushing for it to be slightly shorter than that. I appreciate the workloads, but unless we start to get this information, then this is sitting, and people will, our vulnerable people out on the streets are not receiving the best service that they possibly can. So I would like to see that length shortened somewhat.
Is that an amendment you are proposing, Councillor Mayes?
Yes, it is. I would like to see it half that length. 3 to 4 months at the most. Thank you. Do I have a second?
That's Councillor Beale seconded that. Councillor Morris, I know you want to come back.
Thank you, Chair. Everyone's very busy. I am also very busy. I get up early and I go to bed late, and I deal with these problems not just in the Malvern District but all over the country. I could spend all day dealing with these problems and still have more at the end of it. I stand on what I am really sympathetic with those. I have got more sympathy for the vulnerable people out there that are experiencing bailiffs. Malvern District Council are sending out bailiffs now. It might be an idea that maybe we stop the bailiffs going out now on our behalf until we get this item done, and that way at least we'd know that we're looking after our residents. I'll put that in as an amendment possibly. Is anyone wanting to second me on
I need to check whether we have the power. I need to check whether we have the power to do that first, because I don't know if we have the power to do that. Cheryl, do we?
Full council would have the power, so if we could recommend that to full council.
How do we? Was a second from Councillor Beale, I think, wasn't it? So was it? Yes. Yeah. So Cheryl, where would we need? Where would we need to go with that?
That's not, that's it, not in the terms of reference for this committee. So that would be something that would either need to be a motion or a suggestion to council. But obviously, you know, the normal process with overview and scrutiny is that you'd have the full report, and then your recommendations would be based on the full report and your consideration of the full report to go to council. But
this is an exceptional case because we're having to step in and do interim measures until we've got the information. Now, can we as a committee do a motion to full council, or does it have to be one of us?
I would like to put that forward as the amendment.
It won't go anywhere as an amendment, Councillor Morris. It has to be a motion to council in order to get passed.
Yeah, a motion would go via with a member, and then with it being seconded.
Okay.
And that would come notified directly and outside of the committee.
So, councillors, can I leave that with between you to pull something together and propose and second? Can I leave that? I think you've support here, Councillor Morris. So, I think that's
a motion to full council. I'll make that a motion to full council. Put down and make that a motion to full council. It's only fair. If we can't get this done in time, we should suspend the negative impacts that it might have on the residents. That would be my concern. Let's put our money where our mouths are.
Okay, so I'll leave that, members, in your hands to put something together for council. I think, because I think we have support for this. So, okay, did anyone else want to speak? Thank you, everybody, for a very good debate, a very good discussion. I'm really pleased at the commitment that there is to this, and I'm even more pleased at the fact that it's not politically based in any way, that we're actually coming together as human beings to address this issue. So thank you for that, members. I'm really, really pleased about that. So can we move forward then and agree with the amendment? Tara, do you have the words for that? Sorry, I'm springing it on you now.
You're fine, Chairman. Well, Chairman, the recommendation was that the committee notes the initial response and information provided on the debt recovery process, and considers a deferment of the review for 6 months, and that's where the change has been. The recommendation was 3 to 4 months, and so whether it was to redefine the scrutiny in light of the interim report. Thank you, Tara. So the amendment is to reduce that to 3 to 4 months. And I think we've been clear on the focus that we want. I think we've been very clear about the focus that we want, which is the numbers. But I can work. We can work with officers. But I think a member's clear about that. Councillor Bassinger, then Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to sort of just to make sure that we are clear, and the report in itself I think is fine. We just need that information to know, how many actual vulnerable people, how they are vulnerable, how they're getting in contact. It's that part of the report we're lacking. So that I'm willing to support. Thank you, Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to suggest a date. So we're saying 3 to 4 months. I thought we could say end of August at the latest for the report.
Yeah. End of August at the latest. Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Councillor Morris and then Councillor Morley.
Asking for that information will be almost pointless. It's like asking how long a bit of string is. You'll never be able to count the vulnerable people, because a lot of vulnerable people bury their head in the sand. It isn't something that should be based solely on data like that. It should be based on following morals and legalities. The protection is already there for them in law, taking control of goods regulations, as I keep saying. If this benefits 4 vulnerable people or 400 vulnerable people, I think that the council needs to go for it, because we are really missing a trick with, not using attachment of earnings orders more widely than bailiffs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. And we have to have evidence. We have to provide evidence in order to get something through. It's process again. that we have to deal with. Councillor Bassinger, is that a legacy hand?
No, Madam Chairman, it isn't. I mean, the sort of information I would really like to get, apart from the vulnerable side of it, I would love to know exactly how much money we do recoup. You know, how successful are these outside bodies? Because I know they in themselves must cost quite a lot of money to get these people to go and do this, and I'm not sure we actually get the return for the money we're paying. So that is a bit of leverage that we could use to also strengthen our case, to be honest.
Again, I think we asked for this back at the beginning.
Yeah, I did.
I'm pretty sure we did. Councillor Morley, sorry, I think you were next.
Well, I said lines on similar lines to Councillor Bassinger, and yes, it must cost an arm and a leg to do this. And
it doesn't. Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Morley. The bailiffs are on commission. They are running on commission. So anyone that we deem to be vulnerable, they are instantly losing money on. It doesn't cost us to instruct the bailiffs. We simply phone up the bailiff and we say, take this case over. And that there, you know, the motivation is purely financial on the bailiff's part. Any
totally agree.
We give them is a little gold mine, and if they have to leave that gold mine alone, see, the thing is, vulnerable people are a lot more liable than people that aren't vulnerable. So the bailiffs actually enjoy taking vulnerable cases because they're more liable. It's quite so easily intimidated. The system is completely backwards. And what we are doing here is we are exploring an argument that is quite old, which we already have the answers for. We're never going to find out. Sorry, go on, Clive. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're in business. It's a private business, and I totally agree with you. But going back onto the figures, surely I can't even take 3 months to get those figures. They must have it on a website somewhere or on a data serve somewhere. But are all these properties, are they privately owned that they're being evicted from? Because I know your point, but some people have bought houses and if they don't get their rent,
one at a time, please. Can you let Councillor Morley finish, please, Councillor Morris? Councillor Morley.
No, I was just saying the evictions, are they all council properties they're being evicted from, or are they private?
It's not evictions, Councillor Morley. It's not evictions. Malden District Council, as far as I'm aware, don't have any residential properties that we would need to use bailiffs for. Got housing association. It's more. It is more.
Okay. Well, they should have those figures.
It is more
readily. The delay's a nightmare.
Yes, they've got those things. If we put a freedom of information request in, they'd have to by law
you better get those figures.
Respond to it. Is it 30 days? So what?
Anyway,
I can't. I mean, that if I had put a freedom of information request in, we'd have figures by now. What's going on?
Not necessarily. They quite often come back and say that it would cost more money than is. You know what they say, Councillor Morris.
You know what I mean.
You know the excuses that.
You know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the gist. You put the gist. I mean, they could probably find out within a couple of days the numbers.
Yeah.
You don't need 3 months, to my mind.
Thank you.
If I was in business and I was waiting for 3 months for someone to make a decision, I'd go nuts.
Yes, but, so we do have. I do appreciate this, but we do have to remember that they have got. They are working really hard. So we've got to find a. We've got to find a solution here that is workable.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want is us to be in this situation again in 3 months, 6 months' time. So I'm going to propose another amendment, which is 2 months. No.
Yeah, fine.
Hard, and also people are being oppressed, you know, by our council when they should. speak.
I know.
I'm
We've got to
okay,
go through a process here. I know.
Can we
I
have
know
some
we're
order, please, members? I haven't got a gavel to bang at you. Go to Councillor Passenger next, then Councillor Mays.
Yeah, no, I agree with Councillor Morley and Councillor Morris that the figures must be at hand, but I do think we have to give them the time. But I do think we must, as a committee, make it really clear on the information that we require. And I think we need to know the percentage that bailiffs charge and how much of the debt we actually get back every time they move in, which we probably won't know that. We need to know who the vulnerable people are, or at least how many there are in some form in our district, and we need to know how they contact the council. How is this information?
Councillor Morris, sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Passenger. Go on.
So
I didn't say you can speak, Councillor Morris. I said
wait for the chair.
Councillor Morris. Councillor Passenger, if you could finish, then Councillor Mays, and then Councillor Morris.
Because I'm getting very confused. But if we could just really make it clear of the information we need and get that into.
Thank you, Councillor Passenger. Councillor Mays.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I still stand by my original amendment that I made, which was seconded. I think we do have to be reasonable. Whilst I concur with some of the comments that have been made, you know, in an ideal world, it would be great if we could have it next week. And that would make life so much easier, whatever. But we are in a very tricky position. We are on this, you know, this roadmap, whether we like it or not. Let's try and be reasonable all the way around. Some of our officers themselves are vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, we are throwing this word around willy-nilly, and we really shouldn't, because you know, there are people out there that do need our support going forward. And I think ultimately some of the recommendations that could come from this, you know, the use of an attachment of earnings will be perfect. However, we are not at that stage at this point, and we need the information. But let's be reasonable about this. Councillor Fleming suggested the 31st of August. That is, I think, is a reasonable length of time to expect a decision and some facts and figures to come back to this committee to actually scrutinise and move forward on. Thank you for allowing me to speak so long.
Right, thank you, Councillor Morris. And actually, I want to wrap this up. I know, Councillor Morris, but we are going round in circles here, and I think we're all agreed on the fact we need this information. So I'm going to put this to the vote, and then if it goes, if it falls at vote.
I have some of the information, Casper. I have some of the information.
I can't hear you, Councillor Morris. Can you turn your camera off? I can't hear you. No, you're frozen. Can you turn your camera off and try again, Councillor Morris, please?
I have.
No, you've
gone. No, you've gone.
I have most of the information. I certainly have the information that Councillor Passenger's been asking for. Yeah. The base. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
On and off.
Have you got me?
I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it to the vote, and if the vote fails, then Councillor Morris, by all means,
they send a letter that costs £75, and then if they visit, they charge £325. Now they're charging people that haven't got money more money that are vulnerable. So, Councillor Passenger, thank you for your questions. I've pretty much got it all done. Now, the problem that you guys don't seem to realise is if I put in a freedom of information request, I am legally bound to get that information in 30 days. Except we are going to say, oh, I'll tell you what, let's actually give them more time than what they would legally be required if a member of the public put this in. This is ridiculous.
Yes, we are going to do that, because I suggest if you did put, and by all means, Councillor Morris, do put in a freedom of information request, because I'd be interested to see if you do get that back within 30 days, or if you get the response which says we are unable to provide this information within this time period because of blah, 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 blah. So I think we're doing double-edged, two-pronged attack.
This has been months, and we are not getting stuff done that will benefit our vulnerable residents. 30 days is the time limit that they should be held to, and it's the time limit they would be held to by a member of the public. We are councillors. We should be requesting at least what the residents have. We should be entitled to get this information a little bit quicker than most residents, because we are making important decisions. They are mugging us off.
Okay, then can I suggest, Councillor Morris, that you propose an amendment that we have the information within 30 days, that we vote on that, and then if that falls, I think the correct procedure is we then go to Councillor Mays's amendment. I'm not sure whether we need to differentiate between 30th of August and 3 months, so I think I'd be happy to take Councillor Morris's motion first, if it has a seconder. So do I have a seconder for Councillor Morris's amendment, which I believe is to change the period from 6 months to 30 days? Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Morris, we don't, I'm afraid. Oh, Councillor Fleming, are you seconding that?
Oh my God, you're not agreeing.
Can we let Councillor Fleming speak?
No, I wasn't seconding it. I just wanted to point something out.
Can we let Councillor Fleming speak, please?
Right.
Councillor Morris, can we let Councillor Fleming speak, please?
Right. You're a
Councillor
disgrace.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Fleming.
Chair, I was just going to say that the difference, Councillor Morris is requesting information, but I think the officers are asking for they were asking for 6 months to write a report, which is a larger piece of work. So I just didn't want the two mixed up. So I think that Councillor Morris should do his freedom of information request for the information. I think we should allow the officers until the end of August to do the report, which is a bigger piece of work, and then we can go from there at the end of August.
April, May, June, July. So do we have a seconder for Councillor Morris's end of August? Because that's longer, that's 4 months, isn't it? Councillor Mays.
Yeah, could I come in? We need to really vote on my amendment, which was an amendment to the original
yes, you're right,
proposal.
because nobody seconded Councillor Fleming's amendment, did they? And Councillor Morris's amendment, being the most recent one, needed to be heard first. I believe that is procedure. So then we would go to your amendment of the 3 months, which was seconded, I believe, by Councillor Beale.
Councillor Beale.
Councillor Beale. So if we can now
if
go.
I could then interrupt you, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Councillor Fleming then asked for it to be a date. I agreed with that
has
amendment.
to be another amendment. Sorry to cut you, Councillor Mays. That actually has to be another amendment. So I suppose if that was now proposed, that would be the most recent amendment, and then we would have to take that before we took Councillor Mays's amendment. So, Councillor Fleming, do you wish to make that amendment? And if so, do we have a seconder for that amendment?
Thank you, Chair. No, I was just suggesting a date, just because it's easier. I think we said 3 or 4 months. I just think putting a date on it is a bit more solid. That's all.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Mays. You could amend your amendment of the original recommendation and say.
Okay, well, I would like to make an amendment that it is the 31st of August, which actually, as you're quite rightly saying, is actually, I think, 4 months and a little bit from today. So it would then go to a meeting that would be sometime in September. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Or is Councillor Beale prepared to second that as
I'll
that
second
date?
that. Councillor Fleming, second that.
Thank you. Okay, I mean, September does feel like an awful long time away, doesn't it? Really, but then I think we have a summer recess. Do we have a summer recess? I don't know. That was wishful thinking, members, wasn't it? So okay, so we have the amendment to the amendment, which is that we have the information by the 31st of August. So Tara, can we take a vote on that?
Madam Chairman, could we just
yes.
check? Yes, could we just check with
Wording.
Mrs. Could we just check with Mrs. Hughes that that amendment to the amendment is has been done correctly?
I think it's Tara that will help us out with
Oh, I
that.
beg your pardon. Could Miss Bird tell us?
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy that we've followed the right procedure in respect to that, yes.
Thank you very much, Tara, for that. So now I believe we do go to the vote on the amendment, which is
So
now.
the recommendation now reads, Chairman, that the committee notes the initial response and information provided on the debt recovery process and agrees a deferment of the review to the 31st of August 2021. And then it says whether it wishes to redefine the scrutiny items in light of the interim report.
Thank you. I think we've agreed that we do want to redefine the scrutiny items, and I do think we've been clear on those, but can I just bring Cheryl in, please, to confirm that?
Yep, so I've captured all the specific data requests that have been made in the meeting, and I will pass them on to Mr. Jennings.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so can we have pardon, Councillor Morris?
Any chance you can get Stuart to ring me, like I haven't already asked him?
Yes, Councillor Morris, I will ensure that that is passed on. So if we can, I believe, well, it will be a recorded vote, won't it, I think, anyway. So I'm proposing a recorded vote. I'm sure Councillor Morris is seconding that. So if we can vote on the motion that the committee notes that the initial response and information provided on the debt recovery process and considers a deferment of the review until the 31st of August, and that we do wish to redefine the scrutiny item in the manner already discussed. So if I could ask Tara to call the vote on that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, if you could just indicate if you're for, against or abstaining when I call your name, please. Starting with Councillor Bassinger.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Miss Beale.
For, reluctantly. I would have liked to have seen it done a lot quicker, but I have to go with the general consensus, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
For, please.
Councillor Mrs Fleming.
For, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mays.
For, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morley. Councillor Morley.
It appears to have frozen. Councillor Morley.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you very much. Got that. And Councillor Morris.
Trying to kick it into the long grass against.
Thank you very much. So, Chairman, the results of that are 6 in favour, 1 against and no abstentions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you, members. So that brings us on to item number 9. Any other items of business that the chairman decides are urgent? Now, members, we do have to produce an annual report. So I don't know if members have anything that they wish to feed into that, but if they could do that via me, please, via email. And I will be working with Stuart Jennings on that report. Well, Stuart will be doing the work and I will be supporting. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, could we put the annual report back for 6 months, please? Because we're all really busy, you know, so let's put it all back for 6 months, eh?
this is something that I'm told we do. I've really, you know, it's something that is done. Again, it's a procedural thing. So if we could do that, please, if we could make sure that I have any, if we could make sure that any information you'd like comes forwards in the report comes to me or Director Stewart, that would be great. Thank you very much.
I'd like to put forward, but I'm going to delay it by 6 months just because I can, because you guys will let it happen.
I'm not sure that you can actually, Cheryl. It's a thing, isn't it?
You can't make me give 6 months. Oh, we've got a thing, but they ain't got a thing. That's a thing, isn't it?
Can you clarify, Cheryl, please?
So an annual report of the activity of the committee is just an expected part of the process. That would then be reported back to council, so the council can see what the committee's been up to over the last year.
Thank you. So yeah, out of our hands.
The officers to get their finger out. The committee's been waiting on the officers to get their fingers out. That's what they've been doing.
I'm sure we can add that submission to the report, Councillor Morris. So that brings us on to item 10, which is closure of the meeting. Members, thank you for your contributions this afternoon. Thank you very much. It has been lively and frustrating. I acknowledge that. So thank you for bearing with us. And I now draw the meeting to a close at 7:21 p.m. So as the meeting is now closed, members, please, you're advised not to enter into any further discussion on this forum and to please leave the meeting promptly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you as ever. Thank you as ever to officers.